This is the back, I attend now often enough. This is the back of our head.
But
People who are on TV, they get the back of our heads. I'm
And,
getting very accustomed to the view on social media.
I'm sure they're still in the same house they've been in.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to watch meetings.
I don't know that.
I listen
You know,
to a
the
lot
White
of
House
driving.
on
I do,
back
they're
and
like
forth.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
podcasts.
Yeah, like podcasts. Great man, the other
Is that
day.
where he lived?
That's where he's at, that's where he grew
Of all
up.
the
Yeah.
For some reason, I think he.
Some of which I dread that I missed a point,
Well,
I had to go through the
I'm
whole thing
Right.
Hopefully.
to get, I
Maybe.
fast forward, but only to
The
the
Hillcrest
surface.
House.
There's always some
Yeah.
redundancy. And I'm like, oh, now I have to hear myself speak. No surprises.
And,
He's always.
Well, that's great. And I know you were anxious probably to get out. From under that. No reason to do that.
I gotta go. I think
Oh, good.
we're, don't work out there, I don't know, big space. But I did.
Did you go upstairs or downstairs?
It's cheaper.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Hello, Laura.
Although it still has a pretty good ingress egress. Maybe something.
Hey, John.
Might be some.
Hi, how are you?
Laura, how are you?
I'm Chip Evers.
Chip is nice to meet you. Heard a bunch of them.
Uh-oh.
It is good.
Okay, yeah, they gotta get
Boy, I
worried.
turned off a lot of those questions the other day.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah, those could be bad.
My name is.
The plates are over there. Oh, there.
Yeah, no, it's like pieces.
Did you bring that with you?
The notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is
This
minutes from the last meeting, which I was not at. I thought I was, but I wasn't.
I don't have a tag for you yet. We should get one. Do you have one?
It says register.
More set. Wow, you're at the table now? Got a pay raise?
Wow.
I got invited.
Yeah, we get a lot of money.
I
You
did get
know,
to read
Mike-
now.
Mike Johnson.
Forgot about it. Yeah.
Mike Johnson, you know what, Chip Evers?
Chip, how are you? Mike, good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And that's not a euphemism either.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, Kristen. I talked with the champion folks yesterday.
You want to be on the corner or you want to be?
Okay, I mean, yeah,
Kind of a weird gap.
It has been for a long time. Set it down.
Yeah, Mike.
we have to hold
Check my ID.
space. in that
Does he?
there.
Yeah, he ran it.
They're more.
Check it, I did
educated
see if
about it
sneak it or.
Uh-huh.
Ropes.
Uh-huh.
So,
That was on
They're in for
purpose.
repairs, you said?
yes, yes.
That was back up there.
Upgrades.
He does a lot.
JB said he
of
might be
great
pushing
stuff.
late a couple minutes,
You always
so
see him on
we got people, you're still the vice chair, so
Right. We'll see see if he's here when we get to
yeah.
top of the hour.
I think I hear
You can
him.
handle it.
He's probably just getting his ski boots off.
Nice day for it. Yeah. It was amazing.
There, he's there. never
There you go.
mind.
Give the carrot.
This morning.
it. Oh,
How you doing?
Hey, Victor.
Good.
How you doing?
So-
Good, right? Oh, yes, we did. We do have names.
You're right.
right?
Did you get?
Hello, Gregory.
I don't know how you're here. Sorry.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Say where you are.
She's a little bit short.
Hi, JB. How are you?
So official.
Hey, Greg.
I know I have a name tag.
See you, my friend.
Yeah.
Michael.
Greg Smarter, because they're the closest to the exit.
Uh-oh.
What's that?
It's like, this is your pre-grab your name tag, Will, or have a big hug. No kidding. Are you surprised?
I know you're not. You ski today too?
But I got a little bit of everything. I went swimming today. Yeah, I made sure I used everything, ate everywhere.
Hey, JD, we don't have elections on the agenda, or do we wait till June for that?
Election should work with us tonight. Gives me time to lobby for somebody else.
Chair, vice chair.
You know you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, something.
It looks like John Baker got the lot of
We'll figure it out.
We gotta Are you guys moving around before everybody else came? Michael, are you smiling?
Every day.
Boy. Skiing at all?
I
think because.
Got the league party tonight? That's it? Yeah.
Yeah, you better keep this moving.
Don't worry.
Although this is very mild.
I'm ready.
I like going skiing like tomorrow because we have
Ever
the
since I
league
put
party
that ski in.
leftovers.
There you go. I thought you almost more something like a back leg.
And that doesn't,
Years ago.
it doesn't.
I don't know, I told him last couple.
That's
You're my right leg.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Step it up.
You want me to help take care? I gotta be able to here. Yeah, gotta be able to do it.
Oh, that's good.
You know?
So that was a telltale sign.
Well,
Hey, guys.
I mean.
Started out with, she was born.
And you did it enough times.
Yes,
Hardly frozen.
Gotta get done by 6:30, gotta go and have a ski party.
Happens sooner rather than later. Yeah, but whatever. Very good first
All the
time.
way down.
It's been great.
Yeah.
But I did what I did when I did it.
No turnaround at Christmas time.
It's like it's all about people. There's a guy here.
Until I did.
I think I hear you say you had.
That's how I have it. I vote now. LLC. I don't think I control.
I'm sure they're going on this.
Yeah, that's on the other side.
And then followed up, actually, I went back and see
My wife and I. Website. Really? So it says. Room.
It happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, you win that race. You tell me, okay?
Couple anecdotes.
She's winning, no, she's
Yeah.
not.
All right, it is 4:00 on whatever day it is. So I'd like to call the meeting of the Harbor Commission to order. And Victor, looks like you're secretary today, huh?
Yes.
Would you, yep, please.
Laura Course,
Yes.
JB,
Yes.
Bill McCullough,
Here.
John Baker. Yes, here. Greg Fisher,
Here.
Karen Strout,
Yes.
Jeff James,
Just here.
Chip Evers.
Here.
All right, we were just missing Bill Brown and Tom Graham Jr.
Bill called, said he was under the weather, wouldn't be here, and I haven't talked to Taz, so I don't know where he is. Thank you.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum, excellent. I'd like to welcome a couple, three new members to the table, Greg Fisher, John Baker, and Chip Everest. Four people. Well, looking forward to working with you and we'll keep rolling. Next up, minutes from our October meeting. They're in our packet. Anybody have any changes, corrections?
I'd make a motion to accept as written. I was not here last month. That was confirmed by Michael Johnson. So.
We did have that talk. And I can't remember.
No, it's on the recording. That's a
Good
good.
idea.
Yeah.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, same for opposed. Victor, thanks for getting those out. As you did. You all have the agenda. Are there any additions to that?
I just recommend, Mike Johnson has an update after your business.
Good. So Michael, don't let me forget you. Can I assume the agenda is approved by consensus then? Any objections? Great. Public comment on anything that's not on the agenda today? Yes, sir.
Keith Newbury, 2565 Pennsylvania, West Weekly. Our family has been blessed to be voting on Little Traverse Bay since the late 1800s, believe it or not. And my grandfather, actually, I was looking through the archives, capsized his sailboat that was moored out in Weequay in 1903. But my comment for you today is I would ask the Harbor Commission to look at business licenses for Ford Park. We should not, the city of Harbor Springs and the townships that contribute to Ford Park should not be subsidizing businesses and giving, for example, a blanket fee for a boat launch. They can do them electronically. They can pay the same as all of us do. You know, there are businesses that are dropping boats, picking boats out. They can pay the same fee that the residents of this community and the residents of the township that contribute to maintaining Ford Park. So there is a way to do electronic log. You can bill electronically, you can track electronically. They don't have to fill out any form. If their constituents want to buy a year-round permit and the boats are dropped every weekend and picked up, they can have year-round permit and they can track it. But we should not give a blanket rate to any business or I'm talking about the boat ramp specifically. Because there are people that are also storing boats, and if they see that this is a subsidized rate, they may actually say, hey, we can drop your boat every weekend when you're here. There's a single, time rate. So I would ask that everybody pay the same rate, and you can do electronic log. When I drop my Bertram, my 1964 Bertram, my trailer doesn't sit there. So it's not just about the parking. I drop my boat and get my trailer out because it takes up a lot of space. So I just would ask the township with the budgetary constraints, it would bring the same amount of money that the rest of us are paying, and it would just add a level of fairness to those who are using Ford Park and are blessed to use Ford Park. There should not be a subsidized or discounted rate. That's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments on that. Any other public comment? All right, old business. Review harbor plan draft and discuss next steps. In your packet was a pile of paperwork, and Victor has been working on this since charge of the last fall. So Victor, why don't you kind of chime in here and lead us through this?
Yeah, so last fall, the idea, John Baker had done the summer, he went out and did a boat count. And Harbor Commission asked me to basically update the data, reorganize, format the plan, incorporate John Baker's data into that plan. So what I provided with you is an update, extensive, I think, update of the actual data. Didn't change any of the goals or anything like that. Didn't touch those yet, but adding the data, getting rid of old language, clarifying some language. So I included a red line version of it so you guys can know what the old plan looked like compared to the new edits, and then a clean copy version. I sent it to JB about a couple of weeks ago so he could give his review before I bring it to you. So that's the goal right now, is to look over that plan, I guess, and is there any other data you want? Do we need to make adjustments? There should be other edits. Please share those with us and with me. We can talk about them here. And then to talk about, what's our next step. And I have an outline on the agenda here, sorry, on the screen here. And I believe next step, I would come back in May with just the goals taken out, and then we can have a discussion on the goals and what kind of feedback you want from the public on those goals, whether those goals should stay the same, change, or be enhanced. And then we would make some surveys, staff level, on those goals to distribute to the public, and then base our public information meetings on those goals. So right now, what you see before you is a document that includes updated data, but the goals and objectives have not been touched. There's been some we cleaned up the appendixes a little bit with, there's some old data information there that we just didn't need. And yeah, I'm open. I just did this because I know 2 decades ago, I don't know who wrote it 2 decades ago, was it Babcock?
Babcock.
Yeah, so did it in-house over the winter, over the few months, so. This is just as much your document, so, let me know which direction you want to go with it, if there's more or less to add.
I think today's focus looks at the data that we've collected, and if there's any holes that anybody thinks we have that we need to get filled before we start to discuss goals and objectives, which is really the meat of the potatoes of what we're talking about. I only had one comment in here, and that's on page 10 in parking. I'd like to add a statement in there about the marina lot behind the harbor master was funded by marina dollars. Both the engineering and the paving of that and the striping was all paid for by boaters. And separate that from the rest of the parking, which was paid for by tax dollars. And that may be important as we go forward in our discussion and how that all works. Other than that, I didn't see anything else with the data. I thought John did a good job collecting all that stuff. And the data was interesting. We actually had fewer people on the waiting list this year than we had 20 years ago. By about 4 or 5. That is. But anybody else have any comments on it? I thought Victor did a good job myself. So.
I have a question.
Mhm.
And it's on page 29, and it's the under mooring and dock inventory. And there was a red line through the last sentence, which is about the docks and moorings east of Artesian. And it was referred to throughout a lot of our data, but here it was knocked out, and I understand why it wouldn't be a good count because of the east wind and the troubles, but we talk about it everywhere else, but there it got redlined out, and I don't know why, and you don't have to answer me now, but just would you take a look at that for us? Like, unless you know right away, why did it go away? Because they're docks and then moorings, so.
Laura, are you under mooring and dock inventory?
Yeah, I'm on
appendix
page
F?
Yeah, on the
29.
red line version.
Okay.
John, did you collect that data? I think that's why I might have struck that out.
There was a question, I collected all the way down to the Roaring Okay. Babcock did not,
Right.
although there was some confusion in his numbers. I think he used those numbers maybe to the weekly doc in one of his calculations, but didn't use them in another one. So I know there was some confusion, but I differentiated, I think, from Artesian into town, or around the end of the point from Artesian east. But I definitely included, there is a count that goes all the way down to Roaring Dock. And even those boats aren't technically in the harbor, they're certainly almost exclusively using the harbor.
So Laura, would you like to see that in there? Or?
I don't know, it was just something that struck me that I was comparing one plan to the other, and I wondered why it got knocked. So if it doesn't belong there, it doesn't, and I can see if John said they don't match, you're comparing opposite things.
Right.
But if it matters in some charts and not others, then it should be, but I'm not telling you which way to do it, but if you would please take a look at it either way and let us know.
I think now that I'm looking at it, it's appendix F says, I updated it to marina and boating data for 2021. And those 35 docks and 45 moorings weren't John's numbers. So I crossed those out. That's why I crossed that out.
Which I think makes some sense.
And they do have one other comment, but I don't know if it's just a comment. When occasionally in the document, we refer to, because of 2008 and the recession and so forth affected some numbers. Some of our numbers from last year, I have several friends that did not launch their boat because of COVID. Some of them didn't launch it because of financial reasons. And even though these are true fact numbers, there is an implication that we might not know. I mean, I think it's something to remember when we look at this now and 10 years from now, that the world was different for 2 years when we collected.
So maybe make a mention of
mention,
how
I will,
COVID-19 may have affected
We did that in 08 with the
Right, we
obvious
did in
downturn
08,
in the
yes,
numbers. So
exactly.
your question is to add it
Please.
as we can here. That makes good sense. Good comments. Anybody else have anything to add? Yes.
I've got a few questions and comments. I was curious about what would happen with the paid parking issue in terms of the statement on parking in the plan. Because I know that's going to be voted on this summer. I don't know if it changes anything or not, because there will be, impact on the parking around the marina, potentially, whatever is finally decided in that plan. So I just wanted to throw that out there in case it's something we might want to consider in the future.
Yeah, hard to speculate on that because nobody knows what's going to happen. So I think we just sail the boat right now and then we'll deal with it as it comes. We'll see what comes and where we end up.
Okay, well, I just want to throw that out there just to keep in mind, because that might have some impact there. I also wondered about, there's a lot of statement about population, anticipated population growth. And I was wondering how you see that related to how many boats, how many slips, is there some relationship there, some kind of percentage that's typical? There's a lot of information about populations. I found it to be really helpful, but I wasn't sure how that impacted how many people might be using boats or having boats and how many might be using slips and moorings and so on and so forth. So I'm sure there's some history there in prior plans, but I just wanted to understand a little bit better.
And actually, JB, you and I talked about how it might have not been relevant for how many people in Emmett County have registered boats, because, we know a lot of people who don't register boats here, but use, and also those people who register boats in Emmett County might be using other lakes and not here. So the value of that data and population, I'm not sure we know exactly what to make of it.
I think it was felt that we should know as we go through this plan what the local population is doing. And if we can draw conclusions that may impact what we do with boating here, well, then we know what those numbers are. But the number of boats is what we're actually dealing with out there.
Right.
So I think that's why the data is on both sides of the thing.
So you're just anticipating maybe more demand for slips or moorings as a result of population growth? Is that what your thought was there?
Well, it wasn't my thought, but I think the reason that number was in there is to make sure that the people who were looking at the plan had some clue what was going on, not just in the waterfront, but every place else on it too.
Surrounding.
And I think it's reasonable to think that if there's more people here, there's going to be more harbor use, whether they boat, walk, view, swim, kayak, whatever.
Mhm.
So factor that into your thinking.
All right, I'm just curious about that. I was just trying to understand how it was related to how we were trying to manage the marina as a whole. I can certainly understand the increasing population is going to increase the demand for more slips and moorings. And playing devil's advocate, I think that, that subject's probably going to come up through public comment, just wanting more slips, more moorings. Why can't we have more? Just going into that whole discussion again.
Sure.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure how it was determined that 2 acres per boat is the standard. That sounds more like a local standard, or how does that compare with other marinas in the area? Do you have those numbers? I think maybe we talked about that last meeting as well.
I think what you really need to take out of that part of the plan, from my perspective, Karen, is a statement in there that talks about the uniqueness of the harbor. And you can't compare it to other places because it's open-ended on the east side. And unlike an inland lake or unlike some other communities we have, this place is special. So trying to come up with a per acre size like you can on Burt Lake for a density of boats in there that the lake can handle doesn't work in our harbor. So those are guidelines. It's the best information you can come up with, but I think we all have to, and that's why there are people at this table from varieties of uses of that water. You have to exercise your best judgment on that kind of stuff, because there is no Bible for this. Yeah, John.
I tried to update that number was 2 acres, I don't remember the number, but it's a DNR generated number.
All right.
And Babcock used it 20 years ago, and I tried to get an update and they don't have one.
Okay.
So, and again, it was a number that was generated primarily for inland lakes. So again, it's a totally different situation here, and it's a very old figure that probably isn't perfect.
Yeah, I was curious where that came from.
There's a DNR.
Okay, it's good to know. We have people on the board with a lot of history here. That's good. Okay. That's it for me right now. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for going through it. Anybody else at the table? Any other comments on this stuff? Well, then Victor, I think the data gathering side of this, we're everyone got that right. That's excellent. So the next step.
Yeah, next step, as you, on page 10 through 13, there's a list of goals on appearance, use, and development of the harbor. So I'm gonna take those goals out and put them in, present them to the harbor, and we'll look at each of them and formulate our public surveys based on them. And I think what we would want from the Harbor Commission then is a discussion amongst you, whether these goals are still appropriate, whether you see some that need to be changed. There's some in particular that we need to focus on getting public information feedback from, some that you can say, you know what, this goal is still the same, or are these goals no longer relevant? So to have, next step is to have that in May, that discussion on the goals, objectives, and then from there, I'll formulate public surveys on that.
Makes good sense to me. Everybody okay with that? Sure. That worked great. Victor, good work on this. Again, the goal here is to try and, yes, Mike.
Did you take some public comment?
Certainly.
So I did look at the goals.
On the data.
On the data. So I don't have comment particularly on the data, but on some of the.
But you do. You just.
No, I have on the introduction. Right. Or the introductory pages. So on page 4, and I guess I'm assuming this isn't a goal, but maybe not. Number 5, where it says delineate the extent of development line. That's been done, right? Unless it's going to be reconsidered.
And we're going to go through that when we look at the objectives.
So you put that in the agenda.
Yes.
Okay,
absolutely.
so then the only real point is page 6. Authority for local control. You could have Raymer look at that, but that act has been superseded twice. Act 191 of 1965 is now is now Public Act 451 of 1994, Part 801.
You said that one time? So we got one.
Public Act 451 of 1994, Part 801, Marine Safety. And I actually don't find those same words in there, so Raymond might have to look to like.
Yeah, you'll be going through this thing once we get it all done, but that's a great catch. Thank you.
Thanks.
And the rest is.
There's a number of things in here, Michael will be going through that relate exactly what you're talking about, because this plan was done before a number of expansions happened, both in the city and the private side. So next month will be more fun. Any other questions about the harbor plan and its focus on that? Great. Victor, good work on this. We'll look forward to getting that stuff as soon as we can. And then we'll get it out to everybody at the table, so you have plenty of time to look at it before our meeting in May. So when you're down on the beach in spring break, I want to see any pictures of pina coladas. I want to see harbor plans. New business, dock and dredge boom down discussion. In your packet was a explanation of where we are with this. We did a lease, obviously, with Wallstrom Dock and Dredge. And we did specify in there boom down, and the question was, what does that mean? Looks like we need to be a little more specific on that. Yeah, I had a couple of comments. Go ahead.
And to clarify, I mean, Dock and Dredge was really good last spring and fall. I only got a couple complaints toward the end of fall about the boom is not down, and that first picture is the picture that was sent, the one picture that was sent to me. And that's when I talked to Zach about, you know, can you put your boom down? And then came up through that discussion that, well, what does boom down really mean? You know, is it all the way down? Is it 0 degrees? Is it 10, 20, 30? So that's really where I think I need Harbor Commission to give me some input about what boom down means. So then when someone makes a complaint, or if they make a complaint, I can go to Zach and Andy, hey, it's not at 20 degrees or whatever it is we agreed to.
Might be helpful, you guys, for those at the table who aren't familiar with why you don't want to have a boom lay flat on a deck all the time.
It's a lot of wear. I'm Andy. I'm the crane operator. The boom being all the way down to 0 degrees is a lot of wear and tear on the machinery, just because of how heavy the boom is. Every time you have to pick it up, it's a lot of strain. 30 degrees is actually where
Victor, can you go back to that first
That first
photo?
photo. So 30 degrees
That's 30 degrees.
is where the machine will actually tell me like, stop what you're doing. It will shut off.
Alarm bells go off and you have to manually override the crane.
Right.
To get the boom to go any further down than what you can see in that photo right there.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, we only put it at 0 degrees when it's obviously winter, we're not using it, or when we, have to leave the area, we do put it all the way down. But 30 degrees is where the crane will actually shut off and tell me, stop what you're doing. This doesn't feel right. So I override the machine to get it down to the spud height. So the spuds are those two big anchors on the side. If we want to reference those as spuds, but spud height would be that picture there.
And so that's what we're proposing, because the boom angle indicator, only we have line of sight to that from on the barge. And so as a point of reference that everybody, both those who live in the area and the city or whoever's coming by to check if there's a complaint, spud height is an easy reference for everybody involved as a kind of guideline of like, hey, it's right at about the spud, that's boom down. And that's at about 23 degrees. So we do have to like actually manually override the crane. However, it's not so far down in most conditions that we're concerned about it. The only thing that does happen on occasion, say we get, a severe storm that rolls through bad weather, that spud will sink. If we're not working and it's parked at Ford Park because of bad weather and we can't get out, that back spud will work its way into the lake bottom. And so after a day or two may appear that the crane boom is up higher. So I just wanted to flag that as kind of a heads up to everybody that there are, when we put it down the next day, it might look slightly different.
So can I ask a question?
Yes,
Is this photo right here, obviously it's a little bit different than this photo, right? So you said this was at 30 degrees.
That's 30
This
degrees.
is probably
That's
23.
boom, like if we use the spud height as boom down, that would then be what boom down looked like.
Right, that was right after we spoke to you, Victor. We went,
And I
so now
tried,
you're at
Yeah, 25,
26.
right?
Does that boom have an extension,
so that's
the way
the
the
other,
Irish's crane does?
Mhm.
So what we're seeing in the other photo of the fellow's window is the extension of the crane?
No,
No,
that's
no,
the
it sure
crane
looks
boom we
like-
use all year round. We do have an extension that makes it much longer.
But that's not on any of these
That's
pictures.
not on,
No.
no.
So they don't have a hydrostatically or ram powered extension on their Michael.
Oh, no.
Okay.
The boom length is the same.
Kind
It's
of
a
looks that way in that
fixed boom.
photo, but
It's fixed.
it's
Yeah.
fixed. Right now, that's 100 foot of stick on the boom right now. We do have another 20-foot section that we could add and would add in the event that the water continues to drop as we have to work further away from shore. That's always a backup plan, is to add that extension on. That way we can, continue to service docks where the water might be too shallow for us to pull all the way in. We're not expecting to have to do that this year. However, that would,
Which in that case, 30 degrees is like, the crane's gonna not wanna do that. Anything lower than that, but hopefully we don't have to do that this year. Water level was great for us last year.
Are you gonna be 10 inches lower?
Well,
Get used to that.
come on, we didn't get enough snow.
we'll see how it
It's-
plays out.
it's going down.
To start things off, it makes sense to me to keep the boom height at the spud height. You've got all of the visuals at the same elevation. It's easy for everybody to see. It's a benchmark that's easily determined by no matter who's looking at it, rather than a degree on the crane thing. And it seems to be a good compromise between beating up the machinery to lower around the deck and anything else. So
Why would we not go with a percentage? I mean, an angle, in other words, whether it's 25 or 30, they're saying that the machine at 30 kind of tells them, hey, what are you doing? Go no further. So that might be a place to start, or 25 would be a little bit less.
one way to look at it, what if the spuds are lower?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Then they'd have to, I think they're willing to lower the boom down if the spuds are lower, but we know what the elevation of the ground is there, unless the barge has settled itself in an event of a storm. And that seems to be a workable number at 26 or whatever you're at with that.
Yeah, and that indicator, which was in that right there, is very difficult to see unless you're standing on the actual barge. So hopefully no one does that. I wouldn't recommend it. But it's difficult to see unless you're standing right there. You can't read the numbers. So, you know, if it's easier for everybody and boom down is spud height, then that's okay.
It's fine with me if you want to call it spud. I just don't want somebody nitpicking and saying that it's not there.
I know.
Well, but we're at 25, you know.
How much would the spud sink, you know, in a normal storm situation?
At Ford Park, not too far, you know, a foot or two, maybe. Other places in the harbor are worse, but Ford Park's pretty hard packed sand. So it's not a huge issue over there. I think 2 years ago, we caught like 7 days of bad weather and it probably went down another 4 or 5 feet. But that
Both
was
spuds or just the back?
The back
usually
one
the
sits
back
more,
one. The
Right.
back one's heavier, so it's a solid steel spud.
and it gets more impact from wave action.
In the front, as you know, a lot of you guys know at Ford Park, there's rock, you know, there's more rock as you get closer to the shore. And a lot of it is just the sheer weight of that back spud being solid steel.
And that's why having it at spud height, whatever the shortest one is, when you put it in, makes sense to me because you can see it. It's right there.
And from what he says, that the difference isn't going to be significant. You really would have to have a nitpicker to say, you know, it's 6 inches off or it's a foot off.
But when you measure, when you determine what the boom down is, are you looking at the angle or are you looking at where the spuds are at?
We look at everything when we're out there.
So I think from my perspective, my perspective, it might be easy to have both say, you know, 25 degrees or whatever degrees is, or spud height, whatever is lower at that time. Because if it sinks or, I don't know, I mean, or whatever is higher, I'm not sure.
Okay, but that too, whatever's simplest,
Then
We're
what do you
trying
have?
to have less people call you, so you don't have to call us.
and I think you're trying to have less people climb on the crane to look at 25 degrees. That's right, I struggle with that number. You
Because I'm not
will
gonna-
have that
we're not
guy
gonna
that took
go
that
on.
picture, climbing on that barge with a
That was
camera.
us that took that picture.
Well, somebody's gonna be on your barge looking at that. That's
That's true.
because you're driving them to do that, to justify where it is.
So,
That's my concern.
so that we all know, the issue is that the further it goes down, the loads are all exponentially increasing.
On the machine.
As you go down, it goes up a lot with each additional. And from the standpoint of you as the owner of the equipment, you'd like to be at like 30.
I'd love to be at like 50.
Right,
I
right.
had it my way.
Wouldn't we all? Yeah. Is 20, I mean, where are you getting in? The machine actually warns you when you get to 30? Is that the end with the engineers?
Yes, the whole system will completely stop me from what I'm
The
doing.
smart guys say
It
30
shuts
is
right
where
off.
you're starting to be in trouble.
Mhm.
That's at this height right here.
And that would be unacceptable to the neighbors and the people with the view.
The 2 complaints that I got, yes. And we don't have a definition. I think so regardless of what we choose, I think it should be a number that both works for the dock and dredge, but also works for what we said in our agreement, which says boom down and what we meant by that when we.
That's why I keep going back to, if the end of the boom is at the same height as the highest spud, then all of our visuals are the same. It's difficult to be critical of the end of the boom if the spud height is the same height to that thing. How can you argue with that?
How high is the end off the water at that?
The end of the boom at
Yeah, how
spud
high,
height approximately.
how high is it?
Ballpark 30 feet.
30, 35 feet.
So.
When you're standing up there.
Well, I was just gonna say, we've got a lot of sailboats out there with taller spars than that.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, it doesn't reach out past the tugboat, so you're not gonna, I mean, unless someone's really getting close, you're not gonna be anywhere near it.
And how off the ground, off the water is it if it was at 30? Ish.
40, 45. I'd have to do that.
Just
quick
curious,
math
yeah,
in my
okay.
head real quick, but
In this one. Is this the spot or is?
Those are the vertical ones that go up and down.
So with that drops to the bottom of the
Right.
lake.
Mhm.
Any other comments from the table?
spud height makes sense to me. I mean, it's.
Seems to be the simplest.
Yeah, it's
I'm
certainly the
fairly
simplest.
comfortable with that. I thought
And
that
they're
was
willing to work with that, so. Well, I would entertain a motion then, if anybody is so inclined.
And so move.
I would second
Let
that.
me clarify, this is a motion that is really advisory to staff that informs my decision for enforcement making, so it's not anything that needs to be revised in the agreement, just something to clarify for me when I enforce.
That'd be great. And the motion would be, Karen, to have the boom, the end of the boom match the height of the spud
Yes.
when the boat is stored.
Right.
On shore. And that's okay with the applicant? You guys are good with that?
Here.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
I'm second.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff. You probably already did that and I forgot. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same for opposed. Great, thanks. I'd like to reiterate what Victor said. You guys have been doing a good job in there with that. Appreciate the cooperation. And hopefully the ice is out quick and you can get to work. Because we don't want to see any of that on June 16th. Thank you. Next item up is blessing of the fleet request. Michael, is this yours or Victor's? Who's?
Well, we got Kristen.
Kristen's here. Oh, good. Fire away.
So let's talk about parties on the water instead. Sharon, our chair, is, you can see her, she's joining us via Zoom. And I'd just like to start by defining what the blessing of the fleet, just to share our overall plans. We are in our 10th year this year. We're celebrating 10 years of a newer tradition in our community. And our plans this year are for Fleet Week. We will begin Fleet Week with a new exhibit at the museum called the Blessing of the Fleet 10-year celebration exhibit, of which we did get a grant for. So that is in development, and it will actually be developed as this tradition continues in our community. Next for that, we do have a history talk that will be themed Cutter Rescues by Rick Mixter, who has been a sellout for us at the museum on Tuesday. And then that leads us into Wednesday and Thursday, where we would like to host Schooner again for educational purposes. We did this 2 years ago. It was wildly popular with summer camps, local residents. We posted in any of the visitors bureaus, and actually we do get a grant for that activity from the Petoskey Area Visitors Bureau. And that will be in the afternoon. And of course, everything leads up to the culmination of the Blessing of the Fleet boat parade itself, which is always complimentary, and all are welcome. And we're funded by donations of people who put their boat in the water, complimentary, but they also donate to the Historical Society. And this is our signature fundraiser. So the tours aboard the historic schooners are complimentary as well. It's just by donation. And we sell raffle tickets, and we have not had the party at Wallstrom last year. We're not planning on having it this year either. There's just too many unknowns and variables with the pandemic. So we've had to shift, and in that shifting, we won an award for the Blessing of the Fleet from the state of Michigan for our success in that shifting, I will share. But Sharon will talk to you about the details of our requests specifically to the Harbor Commission within that realm.
Hi, everyone. I hear it's a beautiful day in Harbor Springs. I wanted to update you on one other thing too. We have a request for every year we have an honorary Commodore. And this year we have an ask currently out to the current Admiral of the United States Coast Guard. 8 years ago, we had the current Admiral at that time, Admiral Papp. He was our honorary Commodore. And this year, our ask is to Admiral Schultz. He retires actually at the end of May, or that's the plan. And the request is that he would come in and we would honor the Coast Guard and what they do for our safety on the Great Lakes. So that is kind of a big deal. He is on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's a little busy right now with some of the things going on. So we're not sure if we will get him or not, but I just wanted to put that out there so that you knew that might be happening. But today we have specifically 3 requests for you. The first one is, as Kristen mentioned, we hope to have again a historic schooner come to town. The last couple times we did this, we had over 150 kids tour the boat, learn about maritime history, life aboard a schooner, etc. And we worked with the local daycares, summer camps, etc., to organize the kids and bring them. It was very, very successful. So we hope to have hopefully the Madeline or the Champion, which Mr. Barkhausen from The Point, it used to be his boat, schooner. And we hope to have that for the blessing of the fleet and do tours. So the first request is, as we've asked in the past, the availability to reserve dockage for one of those 2 boats. And we've talked to Mike Johnson. He knows that it's a little bit in flux because the Madeline is being restored right now. And we won't know until mid-May whether or not that boat is actually available. So that's our first request. The second one is the end of the dock is the primary viewing area for those that are not out on the water, for those on the shore. In the last several years, we've had kind of a play-by-play done by Dave Lyle, and he talks about the blessing of the fleet, different boats that are going by, the history of that boat in Harbor Springs or elsewhere, to kind of, again, keep with the educational element and community element of this event. And the third and last request is, as we've asked in the past, the Isle Royal Queen. We have tentatively commissioned her to come into the harbor again for the blessing of the fleet. We started this with COVID, basically taking a bit of the party out on the water. And we use her as part of the fundraiser, selling tickets. So Wallstrom is providing the dockage for her, and we will be selling tickets for the parade and probably a VIP event the night before. Thank you.
Sharon, how many nights? Let's pick these off one at a time.
I'm
First of all,
sorry.
does anybody not want to do the blessing of the fleet? All for it. Okay, good. So we want to have it. Number 2, how many nights of dockage do you need? You're talking about the Madeline or whatever leaving late, and then after the parade, they would be leaving town and going someplace else?
That's what we've done in the past. They
So
have come in Tuesday, late in the day, to be available for tours Wednesday and Thursday. And then they've departed immediately following they actually take our guests out. Children, we try to find different groups.
Right.
We've used it for volunteers.
And they come back to the dock after the blessing of the fleet and discharge those passengers?
Correct.
Okay, so that's 7 o'clock, Michael.
Probably somewhere in there, yeah.
So where I'm going with this is it's a 3-night ask because people are already booked into marinas at 7 o'clock at night when Madeline would be coming back.
Right.
During a period of time when we would be at 110% capacity on that.
Right. And we would, so we need to learn a little bit more about that. If they're available to take our guests out, we have had them do both. They have brought passengers back in, or they have departed at 5:45, joined the parade, and then headed back to their next port. So if that is something you need to know, we can get you those.
Well, my point is,
If
a 6 o'clock departure,
that's what I was gonna
we
ask,
still
if it
lose the
makes a
ability to
difference.
fill that slip with
Yes.
transporters.
Yeah, that's
Doesn't that
correct.
seem like a reasonable?
Which I was able to do last year. We had a boat on the end of the dock last year that unfortunately did not provide very good viewing for anybody out there trying to check things out, so.
And I think to Sharon's point, you're looking to have the end of that dock open for the actual parade.
For the parade itself.
Yes, just for those 2 hours.
Yeah.
But I
And
did
our
a little
job-
I'm sorry, Jimmy, go ahead.
You go ahead.
I did a little research on the Madeline and it says 56 feet in the request, but I called those folks, the boat's actually 95 feet overall. When you add in the bowsprit and her dinghy davits and then the end of her jib or mizzen boom, and then the Barkhausen's boat, the Champion, is 56 feet overall, which would fit in the end of the dock if we could sell that space to those guys, which leaves that whole west side available for transient boaters. Wouldn't really have to displace anybody at that point. The Madeline definitely won't fit at the end of the dock. She'll have to be side tied where I think she was 2 years ago.
I do, and now I know why she was where she was 2 years ago. Plus, we didn't ask for the end of it. We had, we just, the problem hadn't arisen, but yes, that makes sense.
So, to refresh my memory, we charged them for dockage, but
Yes.
we allowed them to reserve the space that was required for those nights. And which I thought was a pretty reasonable way to look at this, because it is a value to the city, but we also have an obligation to generate income where we can during a very short time window. So let's look at this as a 3-night ask then, so to speak. And is anybody uncomfortable with reserving whichever space we need, either the west side of the west dock for the larger boat or the south end of the west dock for the Champion? We're good with that by consensus? Yes, ma'am.
Well, the only question I have is how many people, it sounds like you don't have to turn people away. We're
No,
getting
no,
kind of close to the 4th of July,
We can
so I
turn
didn't,
people away from
We're
it.
definitely turning people away.
so I guess that would be the consideration.
But at the same point, we're also making money filling that spot with the Champion, because the Champion will fit there for sure.
The Historical Society graciously understood the dollars and cents of this, so they're asking to reserve that space, which I'm comfortable with in either one, and that would be if anybody's uncomfortable with that at the table, say so. Okay, so we got your space, so we'll hold that for you. Just let us know which boats, so Michael has a chance to know what's going on with
We
that.
will stay in close contact with you. As we know right now, we should know something by mid-May. So Michael and I will keep in touch.
And then your second request was the end of the dock. If it turns out that it's the Madeline, you likely won't have the end of the dock unless Michael can move the guy at the end of the dock into the Madeline space. But if she has to come back and discharge passengers, he won't be able to do that. If you have the Champion, you would have the end of the dock that would stay open the rest of that night because you paid for that spot, in which case you'll have the viewing that you want for the rest of the blessing of the fleet. So I think we have that as figured out as we can get it. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, as long, and Michael, we can work together as the event approaches and, try to do the best we can with that. Absolutely.
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
And your third point was how to handle the Isle Road Queen.
Right.
Correct.
In the past, we learned that we had to ask for permits, submit the permit paperwork. So I guess what we're doing is a heads up that we'd like to do that again. I don't know.
Well, you'd like to do it for the first time, because it didn't happen last year.
The first time we didn't, the second time.
Nobody
we
was
did.
wound up about.
Did we make it right last year? It was
I
the
think
year
you did in the
before.
end.
We made it right last year.
But that vehicle's already in place for them to fill out the permit, and that's in the city manager's purviews to issue. So I don't think you have a problem with that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And everybody at the table appreciate you being ahead of the curve on this, and we'll do it right from the get-go this year.
Thank you for your blessing. We are very excited.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it, and good luck.
Thank you, everyone.
Next up on the agenda, request from the Detroit Athletic Club for, this is their second one, Michael? They were here.
Well, they didn't really have a first one last year because the whole thing just blew up within a week of their arrival. So, yeah. We ended up with 3 boats out of what we thought was going to be close to 20. So,
Did we charge them for another 17?
no, but I did fill those spots with people coming off the water. So it all kind of worked out. So,
But last year we did approve a rendezvous for the second weekend after regatta.
right. They came to us with an initial request to be basically that Wednesday immediately following regatta, which we pretty much turned down out of hand. So.
And so why don't you walk through this
They are hoping to bring anywhere from 15 to 20 boats, and they'd like to make this also something they do every season because they have an annual meeting up here, the DAC does. According to this, it's super popular off the water, and they're trying to introduce a boating component to it. The issue that we had last year is they've actually resolved for us with the dates that they'd like to prefer right there. I have been in touch with Kristen Ritter and told her that from my standpoint, we don't want what happened last year to happen again, where I have to scramble to fill those spots with boats that never showed up. That Thursday, August 11th to the 14th works better, I think, for us from a timing standpoint, because it keeps those docks full right through the weekend instead of having to fill those spots on Sunday. Departures on Saturday with their fleet. I told her no more than 20 boats. I also asked that we have confirmation for who's going to be with us by no later than the 1st of July. I think is what I said. Yeah, confirmation with the 1st of July. Anybody that won't show up or has change in plans needs to let us know by no later than a week before the event. So that's pretty much the gist of what they'd like to do with us. So, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to showcase Harbor Springs. We did really well at that Grand Banks Rendezvous 3 years ago. And they'd love to come back, the Grand Banks people. But the DAC, I think, it's going to be a real feather in our cap if we can pull this off for them.
That is, to kind of review, that's traditionally where we start to see a drop off in pressure for slips is that second weekend. And
last year was an anomaly. I think we were busy right through Labor Day weekend last year. Yeah. But who knows what's going to happen with gas prices and boat traffic, and it may shut down again or whatever. So, and we have to keep that in mind.
So Jim,
yes,
why wouldn't we charge them for the 20 boats for the entire time, and then if they don't show up and we're able to fill it in, then we could pay them back or reimburse them for the. Why would we take any financial risk?
good question. And that's why these things get scheduled at a time where we're actually maybe looking for a little bit of business to make sure if we were at 90%, let's make sure we're at 100%. Last year, Michael had more pressure than we traditionally have that second weekend. And that's why we pushed these off to do it the back quarter of the summer on this thing. But I don't know whether it seems like the accounting, because it's all based on the boat length, and that can get to be an interesting dilemma to get rid of. And I think if Michael has enough time, if you know a week ahead of time for sure who's coming and who's not coming, then he does have some time to work and try and fill those spaces if he has the opportunity. I'm okay with these things when they can help us make sure we fill the docks to 100%. I don't know if I'm very comfortable with, let's do this, make this an annual DAC thing in Harbor Springs the second weekend of August every year from here until whenever. I don't know if I like that, because that might exclude other groups that we want to introduce or have up here that might bring us more business or less business or whatever on that. But it didn't happen last year. We thought it was a good idea then. So I guess I'd like to give it a shot for this year, see how it goes, but make it a one-year deal. Yes,
I'd like to echo Chip's comment. What would be the feedback from them if we just went in and say we want a guaranteed amount? I mean, it's a big
guaranteed
reservation.
number or guaranteed?
Take an average boat length and figure it out and just say, here's your deposit. And if you don't fill it, we'll try to sell them and reimburse you. But I've never been to a dock where I didn't have to pay up front.
Well,
Whether I'm
we
gonna
don't
be
take
there or not.
reservations, Greg, and never have.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we are with this.
We are with this group, and we also do the same thing with Regatta. And Regatta's been going on for, 60 years now, 61 years?
So Mackinaw's different. They take reservations.
Really, probably the only marina I can think of in the entire state of Michigan doesn't take reservations, either through the state or through some other system like Dockward's, anybody like that.
Are you talking about the Fort Young Chicago races?
No, just going to visit the island, and I got to pay weeks ahead of time whether I'm coming or not.
Right.
And you can cancel, you pay a percentage to duck out.
You pay $8 if you cancel within 24 hours. They give you the rest of your money back except for $8. So I would say, I've been to a lot of regattas. We've done to Wall Street regattas. You don't know who's sick, who's not coming, whose boat breaks down on the way there. I would just leave it be, my recommendation is leave it the way we've done and see what happens. I don't really want to charge them ahead of time. We've never done it, and there are reasons why people don't come. And I don't think you'll have empty holes.
Sorry.
I like the idea of them having to they're just estimating right now 20, but they're gonna have to commit by, what'd you say, July 1?
July 1st.
So I think that takes care of it, to tell you the truth.
And I'm going to cast that in stone with these folks too.
Right.
I have to know who's going to be here. I mean, the Grand Banks people were the prime example of just committing, and they were all there. And they were definitely, there was a deadline drawn in the sand, and they all cooperated with that. So
We had an issue in the past with major no-shows for regattas.
I can't think of one.
I can't think of anything, no.
Yeah, this is the first one that warbled on us big time. You might have 5 more boats or 5 less boats out of 20 or 30, but they were here.
Because I would suggest that if it was an issue, if it was an actual issue that we're dealing with, then we would have to revise our policy, but we shouldn't just do it for one. We would have to apply it to all requests. That would be my recommendation.
And given the history with, that we have with Regatta, with Rendezvous, I don't think it'd be an issue with these folks at all. Yeah.
John,
They've
you
been
had
pretty
something?
straightforward about it.
No, I was going to say, I want the commitment from them early in the summer, so Michael knows what he's dealing with.
Yes, Karen.
Would it be reasonable to ask for a deposit at that time? If you ask for it by July 1, they'll put some money down on it, so it's like a bigger commitment.
I would need a recommendation from commission to do so.
Well, you'd need to check with
Or check with the.
because we haven't done business that way here with this, and that might be a challenge accounting wise for them to figure that out.
Yeah, we don't do that with regatta.
Yeah, if we do that, we'd have to do it all. It would be a change in our policy of how we approach this.
Why did it fall apart last year? Remind me.
Weather, a lot of boats have mechanical issues. A lot of boats were put their trips off because they couldn't get to Canada, which is pretty much their return trip, to us for their event. Yeah.
Any other comments? Or I would entertain a motion to accept the DAC's offer to come on the second weekend on their first choice, August 11th to the 14th, with a minimum of 20 boats or whatever it is. Actually, we don't even need that, with whatever they can break with a deadline to Michael of July 1 on that.
I'd like to set a maximum with them of 20 boats to allow other boaters like to be with us to be accommodated.
What number do you want?
20,
Max 20.
max 20.
All right, I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded to have DAC come on the 11th to 14th of August with a maximum of 20 boats with prior commitment by the 1st of July to the harbor master. Okay with everybody? Everybody understands it? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Yes. Same for opposed. You guys will let them know what's going on, and they better show the shoes.
As soon as the meeting's over, we'll shoot her an email. She's been waiting for a response.
Super. Next item on the agenda, we had a changeover over the fall with members who had served on the Harbor Commission for quite a number of years. And I'd like to adopt a resolution of thanks and appreciation to Tim Fletcher Rice, Flicker Regan, Fred Rockwitz, and Dick Schiller for their service. Schiller served since 1994 and 2021. Rockwitz since 98. This guy's been around there for a long time. Flicker was on, started in 2015, and Tim started in 2018. So if it's all right with the commission, we'll get these out the door and get them rolling.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Thank them for their service.
Absolutely.
Michael, why don't you run your update where we are?
Very quickly, Victor and I got quotes from Squire Electric and a couple of other folks available to do marine electric work. We're going to be repowering the west dock with 16 brand new power poles that are similar to, actually exactly the same as the ones we put in the east dock 2 seasons ago. We put it off last year from an expense standpoint and also availability standpoint to get Squire down there. But this year they're all set to get those installed this spring. And it's regarded as a maintenance issue. We're really not replacing anything of any true impact on the permit. So we don't have to seek a permit for this thing because it's considered maintenance. We're not replacing any EPDs. Basically upgrading the power poles. And they're all aluminum, they're powder coated, the ones that we installed 2 years ago. And I promise I'll keep them cleaner, have worked out really well. And we're good to go with that in the spring. And also just another thing too, there's 98, but actually 99 as of noon today registered for this year's regatta. Yeah, and they now have 7 boats on the wait list, so it's gonna be nutty. Michael and I need to talk about that at some point, so, yeah.
It's just like a record for this being this early for that. That's crazy.
Absolutely. I've never seen this many boats on this early in the season. I mean, it's only the middle of March and they've already got a wait list.
And the
Which is awesome.
J111s are coming for some regatta.
J111's doing, I guess it's kind of a North American championship. There's 17 registered right now. 22 J70s, 7 TP52s, which is super cool. So, there's gonna be a lot of pressure on the docks, a lot of pressure at Irish Boat Shop, and a lot of pressure on town. So I think just to get everybody aware of what's gonna happen in June and July.
We're gonna run out of margarita mix again.
FYI for the table, last year's regatta, they had an issue with the Sunday course due to an oversight on the yacht club that caused some considerable anguish coming around the point and into the H mark for finish. And we sent them a letter and asked them to remedy that, and we have heard back, and they have done that. So hopefully we don't have that issue again on that. One additional item from my end, you heard me say the water is going to be down 10 inches, if you believe the coast or the Corps of Engineer. So just kind of factor that into your head. And then any other comments from commissioners at the table?
Oh, one more thing. This fall, we painted the interior of both public bathrooms and also painted the entrance to the public bathrooms themselves, and it came out really nice. Yeah, it looks really good in
Should
there.
I add one more thing to that, is that Harbor Master
yeah.
building flooded.
Yeah, the building flooded.
From the top down or in the front door?
When we did the seawall next to the building to help out with the high water a couple of years back, we also had to expose the sewer line and move the sewer line. And in the process, it didn't get as much soil put on it as it has in the past. And we replaced that, 6 years ago, I think, or 7 years ago. The last time it flooded. So evidently we had a little issue in there, and we now have to replace all the carpet in the building. We had Bay Area Clean Care in there to clean it up the other day, and they did not remove the carpet for some godforsaken reason. They told me they were, but then we also got in touch with the insurance adjuster, and he said, no, that carpet has to come up. It's considered a Category 3 health issue. So yeah, so that was a total surprise. Fortunately, none of the electrics got damaged the way they did in the lightning strike a couple of years ago, and everything was off the floor, so nothing got hurt aside of my feelings for having to replace the carpet.
All right, hearing no further, Karen?
I just have a question. Do we have an update on the ferry?
We haven't heard of Pete.
So I reached out to them several times. They said they may come, but they never gave me any information about it. So I gave them a deadline of this meeting. There's no way we could hear them after this. So.
I do know about that. You know, I've never accused myself because I'm on the board of the ferry as well, but they are planning on coming.
The question, I think, was last year they proposed a larger boat.
They're not getting the big boat.
Okay, that was our.
I know, I said that's not happening.
Okay.
So
Same
Able to
boat.
repair the.
they're talking about getting the same boat, but and they're replacing the thrusters now and the fuel tanks, and they may buy the big boat for just cruises to nowhere out of Petoskey.
That was the issue with us, was the side of the boat. So whatever,
Yeah.
everything else is my effort. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Good to go. All right, our next regular meeting is scheduled for May 11th at 4 o'clock here at City Hall. And I declare the meeting, you guys had a comment? No? Yeah.
Oh, I would raise my.
Better be good.
Well, it would.
Now we're not gonna make 5 o'clock.
The conversation was sounding like we didn't know if the ferry was coming back. So I was gonna ask if the city still wanted the ferry dock installed at Fort Park, if there was not gonna be a ferry operating.
We would anyway.
Question.
I was gonna put it in no matter what.
Listen to her.
She's smarter than me.